in February, and he said, we are going to lead. I'm leading with the Egyptians and the Saudis and the Emirates, the Gulf states, to start standing up what they really will become an Arab army. That's the only way to stop the Iranians.
As long as they're protected, while I'm fully supportive, there is no reason for that is a tour.
I agree with that. And
We all had a whole group of news was arrived here just with anybody who was on there. Well, in fact, they even named it. The whole thing is ours.
Can I give you a sense of the two-state solution? Because we need a two-state solution, and here is my sense. We went to Ramallah, we talked to the finance minister of the Palestinian Authority, we talked to the just prior prime minister, Salim Fayyad, we talked to business leaders in Ramallah. First of all, Ramallah it's not Tel Aviv, but Ramallah is not a shuttered city. It has business being conducted. The future of the two-state solution, in my view, the Oslo Accords. The Oslo Accords were 1990. 21 years ago. We now are 21 years hence, and we're no closer and we're further apart from a two-state solution than we were certainly 1993. So we've had one intifada since then. We've had 11 Lebanese war since then. In listening to the Palestinians leaders and listening to the Israeli leaders, both from the Labor Party, Herzog and Netanyahu, both leaders, we spent time with both of them, long periods of time. The problem on the Israeli side, aside from the history of Israeli adventure, I don't disagree with what you're saying about that. But looking back, their view is that we can't reach a two-state solution because of the one reason. It's the incursion of Iranian surrogates into the West Bank and on the border of the West Bank and the Golan Heights. So, and it's clearly there. We all know where Hezbollah is. It's 300 yards from the Israeli border in Lebanon, and they're there with the rockets. And the 50-day war last year in Gaza was funded by the Iranians. As long as the Iranians continue to aggressively support the opponents of Israel on the borders and into the West Bank, and now with al-Nusra up in Syria on the border, the Israeli-Syrian border, it's another potential incursion into Israel. So I'm convinced. I think the two-state solution is potentially possible for a couple of reasons. But the first thing that has to happen is they have to form up the moderate Arab forces and Israel together to stop the Iranian conventional, not nuclear weapons, the conventional and financial support of the enemies of the two-state solution. And I think that has to happen. If that were to happen, and I think it's in the works, that it would heighten the opportunity for the West Bank to become part of the solution. Secondarily, what's really happening in Palestine right now is that Israeli and Palestinian business people are working together to try to create new business, especially in technology. We visited a company in Ramallah that was, there's a company in Ramallah that was started by a Palestinian who had worked for Microsoft and went back and working with Israelis has created an internet business in Ramallah. These things are happening. Business is out front of policy. So one of the scariest things about the Iranian deal is, for me, and it's going to happen, there will be an Iranian deal. It's by next Saturday, there will be an Iranian deal, is that, or at least there'll be approval of an Iranian deal, by a third of the Congress. And then at that point, we absolutely must continue working with Jordan, Egypt. We can't pick our friends. as much as we used to think we could in the Middle East. We're never going to find a country or government that's going to replicate our belief system. It isn't going to happen. So if we want to defeat ISIS and destroy ISIS, we have to combine ourselves with Syrian, it seems to me, Syrian and Iraqi forces who hate ISIS, but may not like us either. If that's how we, if we want to get rid of ISIS. Right. And Iranians are part of that, but they're also taking advantage of it. So,
of course.
So all I'm saying is this thing's going to pass, or it's going to be approved, and at that point, we really need to have a debate, which has not happened since I've been there, over what is our what force should the United States be authorized to use in the Middle East. Right now, there is no authorization, in my view, for use of force. What are the parameters of our force commitment in the Middle East? Once we get that, or we can then make some decisions militarily, but there are economic issues, the refugee issue, Gaza, all the promises that European nations made to help reconstruct Gaza have not been fulfilled. And Gaza has to be, come back and rebuild. But Gaza was Israeli until a few years ago. Now it's not. So it was given back to the Palestinians. So that has to be resolved in some way. That's where I think we are.
Yeah, they're taking everything. So,
Well, they also have a right to exist, though.
Well, you got to figure there aren't any friendly Syrian forces. We tried to create, and General Nagata back in February told us when we were in, I guess it was in Iraq, he told us that we're going to form up, to your point, a moderate Syrian force. Well, they've only been able to recruit 60 people. They were going to try to get to 6,000. So.
And what about now? We're being told that the Russians are establishing a presence.
The Russians are now, well, they had one, and now they're upping their presence.
They've got a base there.
Right, they're upping their presence to defend Assad. There's no way so the Iranians are supporting Assad, the Russians are supporting Assad more aggressively than they were before. It's a significant problem. So we're going to have a nuclear deal with Iran. Iran is going to have, they're going to have $56 billion on day one, and they're going to pay off their loans to China, and they're going to, the other money is going to go to pay back their pensions to their army. That they haven't been paying their pensions. That the other money is going to go back to paying for that. Then they're going to have their oil revenue flowing. That's what's going to happen. They are going to use some of that money for infrastructure and for their population, but they're also going to, Hezbollah has a $2 billion budget per year. $2 billion of that $56 billion is not much to double the Hezbollah budget. So the threat to, in my view, not just Israel, but the threat to Middle East peace is very significant with or without this deal. But with this deal, they get the money. And
Well, the money is theirs.
well, it's theirs,
the
but
money is theirs.
it is theirs, but
Here we are again trying to run the whole world.
It's not just
for the
us, though.
Iran deal.
I know
I'm
you
for the
are.
Iran deal.
And the Iran deal's going to happen. The Iran deal's going to
Will
happen.
you vote for it?
No.
Oh, no.
It's good.
Excuse me, how about this? It's important to know who supports an idea or not. Did you know that the two former heads of the Israeli Mossad are for the deal, and the last head of the Israeli Defense Forces is for the deal? So those are people that are intimately familiar with the security needs of Israel, as opposed to the empty warheads of factions in their politics right now.
Well, Chaim Herzog, who's the labor leader in Israel, is opposed to the deal. The former Mossad intelligence chief leader that we met with, who led the raid on the Iraqi nuclear facility, is not for the deal. There are some that are for, some are not. I agree with you that this is not an easy matter, and so I respect anybody that's for the deal. I cannot vote for the deal knowing what I know in the Middle East.
But I
can't.
know
My
that
friend Ashford.
if you went to Israel, did you expect to get an unbiased opinion?
Yeah, who set up this meeting?
Why did you not go to
Let me
Palestine?
answer that.
Why don't you go travel to Europe? I mean, I came
I was in
from there
Iraq.
about 3 months
I was
ago.
in Iraq. But let me answer that.
Europe.
Iran.
So when I was,
You guys don't have a background.
let me answer.
Guys, one at a time, and then after about 5 more minutes, I know a lot of people here have other issues they want to talk about, so
No, but
we'll have
I
the
don't mind.
comments
I mean, it's
revisit on
important to
some
have
other
this
issues.
debate. It's important to have this discussion. My decision about the Iran deal is primarily based on everything that I've done since I've been there. The trip to the Middle East was an eye-opener to see, the moderate Arab states that are threatened by Iran and that have been threatened by Iran for a long, long time, especially now with Syria. So it is not. So it's partially that. I was invited to Israel 5-6 months ago, and it was the first trip that was available for me to go, and I went.
You had a chance to go.
I can't go to. I
Palestine.
have no time to go to Palestine.
But
I'd
you
love
were-
to go to Palestine.
But you were.
I was in Ramallah. I met with the finance minister of the Palestinian Authority. I met with the. Granted, I didn't spend weeks there, but I did meet with Palestinian business people who are doing business with Israelis. My concern about listen, if we don't have a two-state solution, we don't have a Palestine.
Why are we allowing
But you
settlements?
can't have a two-state solution if the Iranians continue to do what they're doing in the Middle East, especially in those countries that are around the West Bank, and that's the problem.
Israel doesn't want a two-state solution.
I just recently said that he endorses it, that Secretary News at the bargaining table is the most credible nuclear expert. And he said, Skokov said in the Washington Post op-ed that when News says it's a good deal, serious people listen.
When I don't have a quarrel with the fact that the nuclear deal may be better than other nuclear deals that have been done in the past. My concern is, number one, the Congress, the President, no one, we're now talking to the Egyptians, we're talking to the Saudis about mutual defense in the Middle East. That should have been done 2 years ago when we drew the red line in Syria, when we moved out of Iraq. But what we did is we left a void there. So now we have to be back there somehow, not boots on the ground. We have to be there to support our allies there. To do this deal in that chaos, with that money going out at one, I don't care if it's their money or the Martians' money, sending that money back to them without incremental checks, in my view, is dangerous.
I agree.
It's dangerous.
I agree.
It's dangerous. I think it's dangerous. Very dangerous. And that's why I oppose the deal. Not for your reasoning is very valid. Nuclear scientists support the deal because if you look at it in the abstract, it does. They do go.
It's not abstract. That's
no, if you look at it in the abstract, meaning if you carve out the nuclear deal from the rest of it, and you look at the various parts of it, and say yes, we're going to go to the mines. Yes, we're going to go to where the uranium is being shipped potentially to various places. I get that part. I think we have created. There's chaos in the Middle East. To put this deal on top of that, it's going to pass, so it's going to happen. But my view is putting that on top of the chaos that's there is very dangerous. That's what I think. Yes, sir.
Okay. We have made a deal with uranium with 5 other countries. It's called 5+1.
Yes.
Yes. All those countries, they have signed the treaty, and they are going to lift all the sanctions. So what we're going to do as Americans, we're going to corner ourselves because they're Chinese, Russian, Germans, French and British. They're going to lift those sanctions.
Right.
They're going to they're doing business with them.
Right.
So what effect? What we're going to do? We're going to alienate ourselves.
No, because the
from
deal
the
is going to
rest
pass.
of the world because they're not going to support us.
I'm just telling you what I believe. The deal's going to pass.
It's a political thing.
The deal's
No, hey, Congressman, I agree.
Yeah, guys,
What are
this
you
is the
going to
last
do
question.
about
Congressman, I
Chinese
disagree.
deal selling fighter planes to Iran
I disagree.
with the money, right? The Russian missiles, what are we going to do about that?
We should have been interdicting those deals long before. That's the point.
When
The
Bush was
sanctions-
president.
The sanctions
I didn't
that
like
we
him
had
either.
in place didn't
Yeah.
do anything
Bush got
to
us
stop
into
those
this.
things from happen.
What are we gonna do now?
Well, now we got ourselves stuck now because the Russians want to do business with the Iranians. They want to sell military equipment to the Iranians. The Chinese want to do the same thing. So I understand why the Chinese and Russians want this deal done.
So we're gonna guarantee a
Lockheed
war.
Martin will want to
We're
sell
gonna
to the
guarantee
Iranians
a
too.
war.
I mean,